On the way to the bus stop, Bill saw somebody he recognized walking towards him, but he couldn't remember his name. He began to think of things to say when they'd be close enough to acknowledge each other. As they drew nearer, their eyes locked, uncertain if the other was going to stop to talk. The person greeted Bill, as Bill mixed up the phrases, "What's up?" with "How's it going?" Confused, the person blurted out, "Thanks," before he knew what he was saying. Words caught in Bill's throat, and he replied, "Way."
The clip that just played was the opening scene of a fun little animated film called It's Such a Beautiful Day, which is actually a compilation of 3 shorts, written, directed, animated, and produced by Don Hertzfeldt. Hertzfeldt is well known around the world for his animated depictions of taboo and oftentimes dark depictions of life through simple stick figure drawings. Hertzfeldt explains in an interview with La Nuit S'Anime, a French magazine dedicated to art and animation, why he chose his themes.
Dark comedy is the most intelligent kind of comedy. It's the sort of comedy where it makes you laugh, but if it's cruel or if it's strange or not what you're expecting, it makes you think about why you were laughing.
Most of his animations are about the tragedy we call life, and this film is no exception, contrary to what the title suggests. In It's Such a Beautiful Day, we follow the daily life of a very sick man named Bill. As we follow his life in a scatological order, already displaying the uncertain disorganization of life, we find that not all of what Bill sees, or at least what he thinks he sees, is real. Whether it is a giant fish consuming his mind, or demons surrounding him at the grocery store, Bill constantly sees frightening, inexplicable things, yet is merely saddened or angered by them, not scared. For example, when Bill sees the demons in the supermarket, he's not scared. Rather, he's angered by the thought of their crotches being in the produce. Watch.
Everyone in the supermarket looked like some sort of demon, and they all had gigantic bacteria-ridden crotches buried in all the goddamn produce.
The inflection of the generally monotone voice of the narrator makes Bill's frustration apparent. Further on in the same succession of events, Bill suddenly becomes depressed for no apparent reason, and only sees the world from a depressing point of view, indicating Bill's insufferable depression and the world's agonizing display of gloomy images and ideologies. Even this simple transaction at the supermarket upsets Bill.
The checkout girl said, "How are you doing today?" Bill said, "Fine, thanks, how are you?" She didn't answer. Bill felt used.
This is satirical to the way the world forces us to see sadness before happiness, loss before love, and death before life. Furthermore, as we delve into his thought process for most of his life, we find that oftentimes the narration, which depicts his understanding of the world, will overlap and become essentially inaudible. This is used to describe the disrupted reality in Bill's mind. The narration being drowned out by the sounds of the world is paralleled by the idea that unsettling sounds crowd out our own thought process, forcing us to steer towards the upsetting realities that are given to us. The finale of this film begins with the sudden ending of Bill's stream of consciousness and the scrambling panic of the narrator.
It's such a beautiful day. Wait a minute. He's not gonna die. He's not gonna die. But he doesn't die. No. Bill, get up. Get up, Bill. Bill, get up. He can't. He's not gonna die. He can't ever die. Bill?
Then, we suddenly find ourselves looking at Bill's new life. It is one of endless love and loss. Bill has reached immortality, but because of his death. This section of the film is mocking the idea of the afterlife. Basically, the scene represents that even the afterlife is plagued with the theme of sadness. Of the overall film, the audience never actually gets to know how Bill is specifically feeling, beyond what the narrator tells us, This is just another way to show that the outside world controls what we feel, and that feeling is almost always sadness. One of the most interesting choices Hertzfeld makes is when he decides to exclude certain dialogue. Hertzfeld in the film uses elongated pauses of narration and silence as a way to develop emotions for the audience. For example, he expresses a climactic scene of the film, when Bill is told he will not live much longer, through a simple stream of images of Bill, rather than saying what's happened, to project the dolorous of the event.
Bill picked up his new medication, went home, and masturbated for 7 hours. He woke up the following morning and thought his room seemed different.
Hertzfeld uses his unique choices in animation and narration to further his project. His project is simple: to show why people are unhappy. There are many theories as to why people are unhappy. Hertzfeld actually took inspiration from a social psychologist named Qilong Yen, who believes that this unhappiness is brought forward through insecurity in the connections we make with the external world around us, as expressed in the journal Why Are People with Insecure Attachments Unhappy? Yen is quoted in this journal as saying that the result of the experiments is that the reason people with insecure attachments have lower levels of well-being is because they are less capable of obtaining meaning in life. This form of unhappiness is manifested in the film through Bill's less-than-ideal relationship with his ex-girlfriend. This sort of relationship problem, according to Yen, is the first step in leading an unhappy life.
He met his ex-girlfriend during her lunch break, and they took a walk to the park. He noticed that every time he was near her, she sort of moved away with a tight-lipped smile on her face, as though everything were okay. Mostly they talked about death. They agreed that being buried seemed too claustrophobic, and Bill didn't want to be cremated after he'd read that the intense heat boils fluids in the skull until your head explodes. He decided that he'd want his body shot off into space in a rocket ship. He figured it'd be too expensive to launch the weight of his entire body, but maybe just sending his head into space would be good enough, preferably in front of a little window. His ex-girlfriend said she'd be really creeped out if she knew Bill's severed head was floating around above her in space.
But where did Yen's research come from? Well, the most popular source in the journal is from an Egyptian psychologist named Ahmed Abdelkhalek, who focuses on health, physical, and abnormal psychology. His work also makes its way into the film by correlating perfectly with the theme of death in It's Such a Beautiful Day. Abdel collected years of research, which finally ended in 2005 with the publication of his journal, Happiness and Death Distress, on the idea that the reason mankind is depressed comes from the obsession over death, and who it may or may not affect in our lives. Simply put, Abdel collects results of his findings is, as he says in his journal, there is a significant negative correlation between death anxiety and life satisfaction. This also ties back into another journal from 1990 by Dr. William White and Dr. Paul Handel, called The Relationship Between Death Anxiety and Mental Health Distress, where the authors state high death anxious people were statistically and clinically more distressed and were significantly less satisfied with life. These themes of sadness, anxiety, and death are constantly plaguing our lives. And It's Such a Beautiful Day is such a beautiful way to start the conversation of unhappiness. But where do we take it? Well, Hertzfeld's project was never meant to depress his audience. It was meant to show the audience that it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to be depressed, or sad, or anxious, or afraid. Don't worry about who you're close with. Don't worry about when they are gonna die. Don't worry about when you're gonna die. Just go through life, living the way you want to, seeing the beauty in every day, and never forget that you are alive. In the words of Hertzfeld himself, live well and live broadly. You are alive and living now. Now is the envy of all the dead. Thanks for watching.